the moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
All right. So shall we get into it then?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right.
So we're queued up. We're in line.
We are.
Waiting to get onto this ride.
Do you have the My Disney Experience app on your phone? I hope so, because you're not getting on any ride without it.
Why? I can't just use a wristband? Is that passe now?
Well, it's like a combination. So if you want to get on Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, you need an appointment on your app, or you're not getting on it.
Well, yeah. I think last time I was there in 2008, it was all about the Fast Pass.
That's the Fast Pass is passe. Now it's called Lightning Lane.
Oh, we're just getting faster and faster.
It's slightly different, but it's the same concept.
You have to do it on your phone, though, which I used to really like the sort of straightforwardness of the Fast Pass. You went to the Fast Pass machine, you got a Fast Pass ticket for a return time, and you came back at that time. It was very simple. Yeah. Now it's like you have to go into.
What if I don't have a smartphone?
You have to. They just.
Then you don't go to Disney World.
What if I don't want to take my phone?
They are dragging you. They are dragging you kicking and screaming into the modern age at Disney.
And it's actually pretty controversial because, they switched to this system called Genie Plus last year. And like a lot of longtime Disney fans hate this. They said it's like a very janky system. They hate it because they're required to spend so much time on their phone when they want to be, interacting with the park, which is what they've come for.
Yeah, if I come, I don't want my kids on their phone.
Yeah, but the thing is this goes to something that Disney cares about money and not about the user experience. So when you are on an app making ride reservations for a certain park at a certain time, then Disney knows where you will be. And they know how to staff accordingly. And so this is really about cutting labor costs. It's really starting to show up, I think, in the user experience because people are saying, there's not as much staff around. And that's because they're literally cutting staff to the bone so that they can just put people where they think they need them the most. It's really killing spontaneity in the parks for the users, but Disney likes it because, they know that you're going to go to a ride at a certain time. They know that you're going to go to a restaurant at a certain time because they encourage you to make restaurant reservations, right? They know which park you'll be in, they know where you'll be, and they staff accordingly.
But there are a certain set of people that are Disney aficionados, park aficionados, that Disney knows that they're going to go, they're going to complain, but they're still going to go. So I've learned to live with this Genie Plus on the last time. So it took about a day. Then I mastered it. I would like to think.
You just conformed. You've just
I conformed. You got to pay extra to get on the new ride and yeah.
The last time we went, so it was pre-pandemic. There were certain things that were in the phone, but you weren't sort of required to be tied to the phone. Like you could make Fast Pass reservations in advance, through your phone, but you could also make them same day. So it didn't feel like as committed. The one thing that I liked was that you could do a mobile order for the walk-up restaurants and then just walk up and grab your food. You could do that that's
convenient
in the app, which I really liked. And we were having a great time because, we would put in a mobile order, go on a ride, come off, grab our food.
Yeah, and then it would tell you when it's ready. Yeah.
It would tell you when it was ready. And then like we weren't waiting in line. We were walking into these restaurants and there's people standing in these super long lines for food. And I'm like, are they crazy? Use their phone.
Yeah, that was very odd to me because the same thing that happened when we went last year. I thought Disney was pushing everybody towards these apps. Why are there even lines here?
Well, like you said, there's a lot of diehards that just don't want to give into it.
Yeah,
it does sound like
that to me is sort of like a thing that is more about like your convenience. Like that to me was like a benefit to me. Like place your food order in advance and then just go and grab it.
Churros to go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. The issue then becomes getting a table.
Well, yeah, but depending on where you are in the park, sometimes you can just sit outside or whatever, but
it's really hot out.
So you have not stumbled upon a Disney park podcast, but there is a reason that we are having this discussion because we are going to Disney today. We've got 2 movies based on Disney park rides. Haunted Mansion, which is not brand new in theaters. It's been out a week and it's already almost gone, apparently, because it was in the smallest theater in my complex. We went to see it yesterday on its second weekend.
Yeah.
And the original 2003 Pirates of the Caribbean.
Curse of the Black Pearl.
Curse of the Black Pearl. Controversial title. Because there isn't actually a curse on the Black Pearl.
Spoiler alert. But it is our introduction to Captain Jack Sparrow. Probably one of the greatest Disney characters ever created in the last 20 years.
Amazing to think that Johnny Depp was not the first choice of the producers. And this is really the movie that made him like a matinee star. Like he was, of course, everybody knew who he was, but he was more or less a cult figure, even up to that point.
Yeah, he was that guy in Crybaby.
Or Edward Scissorhands.
Or if you were a young girl at the time that this TV show came out, he was the guy in 21 Jump Street. I had a Johnny Depp 21 Jump Street poster on the back of my bedroom door.
So he's one of these actors that everybody knew him.
Poster on my back.
Everybody knew him, but he was never in that like huge breakout hit. Maybe Edward Scissorhands was his biggest. That could be debatable, but then we get him as Captain Jack Sparrow. But that's later.
Yes, we do need to get through this other ride first.
Yes, we do.
Haunted Mansion.
And of course, these were always my 2 favorite rides. When after 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea left Disney World, then these 2 became the standouts for me. And I think that's the case with a lot of older Disney park fans.
They're my 2 favorites also.
All right. Well, we'll hit a little news and then we'll head on into the mansion. We're going to start. You might as well start with your Barbie news, since that kind of ties in with Haunted Mansion not really doing well. already being relegated to the back theater because Barbie is still out there large. She's kicking some butt.
So Barbie will probably pass this weekend, as we are speaking, $1 billion globally. As of yesterday, I think it was at 919 million. So obviously this is pretty rarefied air, especially for like a, new non-franchise film. It will certainly be the biggest global box office take for a woman directed film. So it's a pretty big deal. And Oppenheimer is also doing just fine. It also just passed 500 million globally. But I think at this point too, it's not even just about like the Barbieheimer phenomenon. I think there's just good word of mouth on both of these movies.
Oh, there's still, when I went to go see Haunted Mansion this weekend, there were still people showing up in pink dresses to go see Barbie.
Just like when I went to see Oppenheimer, the lobby was packed with kids. And, it was in 2 factions though, this time. The boys all had Ninja Turtles t-shirts on. And then the girls were all in pink.
There you go. Yeah, everything old is new again, right? It's great.
And nobody was there to see Haunted Mansion except me and a few senior citizens. And that was about it. I
have a senior citizen story we'll get into when we get to Haunted Mansion. We have not covered Barbie yet, but we're really hoping maybe it'll be streaming soon and then even more people will be seeing it. I don't know.
I think they're going to try to keep this in the theaters as long as they possibly can.
I would like to think that they would.
Especially for the theater owners who are very concerned right now because of the strikes, which we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
which are still going. I sent you guys an article a couple weeks ago. I had wanted to talk about this and I forgot. The writers are on strike, the actors are on strike, and AI is a huge, huge part of their demands, like, controls on AI. And yet, while they're striking, Netflix just hired a $900,000 per year AI product manager, and Disney's looking for generative AI specialists.
Yeah.
And basically all these studios are out there hiring AI people for lots of money. You could probably hire 5 writers for what you're paying this AI specialist. They're saying they don't have any money to pay anybody, but they sure have money for AI people.
Yeah, from what I understand, these AI positions are more in the marketing end of it. Yeah, that is interesting. And it's very disappointing to see that these studios are suddenly throwing out this type of money. And yet they're crying that these writers are asking way too much.
If an AI generated story infringes on someone else's copyright, then who gets sued? It's the company, right? It would.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it would be the company who greenlit this.
So this is actually something that's happening right now. My friend Paul Tremblay, who we've talked about on this show before, Cabin at the End of the World, which was adapted into Knock at the Cabin, is suing one of the creators of these AI because they're scraping copyrighted material to teach the machine, and they're not asking for permission from the copyright owners.
It's open source, so people can go in there and just type in, write me a horror story, using Paul Tremblay's style. Right,
but they're using our copyrighted material to teach the machine. Like they're feeding entire books into this thing.
This is how the Terminator started.
Because it's ingesting their books without their consent, credit, or compensation.
And I would think at this point you could have a civil lawsuit, and anybody who has property out there. Yeah, it's a whole new world we live in here.
Supposedly, this is actually according to OpenAI, their data sets used collections of 357,000 digital books. I'm sure one of my books is in there, probably all of them.
Sure.
I don't want my book out there teaching some machine how to write like me so that I won't have a job in 5 years.
The same thing holds true for artists.
Right.
It's the musicians. It just opens the floodgates. It could be, it's crazy. And because of these strikes, we're quickly going to run out of new product to talk about.
So this is where I was going, and I kind of went around in a loop to get here. But basically now industry insiders are saying that if these strikes aren't resolved by the end of September, there will be no new content next year, because they need to have these movies that need to be filming now.
Even stuff that was filming are now stopped, because I know that Deadpool 3 was in production. And when the writer's strike originally kicked, they were like, all right, well, we can keep filming because it's already been written. Ryan Reynolds can't go on set and ad lib because now you're getting a writing credit. You read what's on the page and you're done. But once the actors strike kicked in, that brought everything to a standstill.
They don't want to pay labor, and it's infuriating. We can also tie this to another bit of news. I feel like I'm the news correspondent this week because I've been
should be actually. I try to bring fun stuff to this.
I know you're always like, let's talk about this fun thing, and I'm like, let's talk about these serious issues facing the
I know
industry.
That's not.
Well, in the meantime, I just edit the news out after.
Yeah, exactly. Jim has final cut, so
I'm editing now in my head as we're.
Yeah.
It's relevant because we're not going to have stuff to watch next year if the strikes don't get resolved. But it is going to matter. It is going to affect people because, and I'm bringing this back, looping all the way back to where we started. I think theater owners would like to keep Barbie and Oppenheimer in theaters for as long as possible because they're about to face the same kind of cliff that they faced during the pandemic when there was nothing in production. There were no movies in theaters. And then when they started to be re-released, there was a trickle, and not a lot of people were coming back. And I know a lot of theater owners are very excited about this box office draw for Barbie and Oppenheimer because
my theater was set to shut down.
Right.
And now when I go there, like I said, I'm thrilled to see people back in the theater.
Because once people go, I think it has a cascading effect, right? Like you see a preview for another movie that you would like to see, and then you come back for that movie. And,
to a certain degree, I think there's a fair amount of people that have given up on the theater going experience.
But I
watched on Prime last night a movie that was just dropped in theaters less than 2 months ago for free. I mean, I pay for my Prime account.
I mean, that's a whole other discussion, the streaming window.
No, but what I'm saying is that there are people you will not get back in the theater ever. You've lost a certain amount of people.
But I think that, theater owners were really hopeful that this would be a turnaround. And then because of the work stoppages of the strike, they could be right back in the same position next year.
Correct.
That they were in 3 years ago.
Yeah, no new content. Dovetail that new content to an announcement that just showed up that Lin-Manuel Miranda is set to adapt the 1979 classic, The Warriors, into a musical.
Jim references this movie every week.
Yeah, because we've never done it. So I'm hoping that whenever I say it, we'll cover it, and it never happens.
Yeah, well, I find this. Listen, if he can make Alexander Hamilton interesting, if he can make us talk about Bruno, this is potentially out of the park.
Well, I just get visions of this looking like the Beat It video. So
listen, yeah. Warriors, come out and dance.
A knife fight via interpretive dance. I don't know.
Well, now you're just talking West Side Story, though, which is basically what this movie is, kind of. It's a cult classic. And I think this is interesting, but we might have to wait 5 years for it. Who knows?
Yeah, I really do hope, and I'm sure that he probably will, is keep the setting, keep the time period.
I think you would have to keep the time period. It wouldn't be relevant in today.
And you're going to have it now with cell phones and stuff.
No,
and you need to have the baseball furies and the gang that are on roller skates. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's kabuki theater right there.
Yeah, not only are they on roller skates, they have overalls on. So it's like Robin Williams attacking you.
Yeah, now we're just solar babies, right? I don't know. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, can this guy be sitting home writing if there's a writer's strike?
He can sit home and write. He just can't sell it to anybody.
Well, apparently this was already in the works. That this was just announced.
I mean, if it had already been contracted and everything had been done before the strike, then yes.
Yeah. Right.
But certainly you can stay at home and write whatever you want while the strike is going on. You just can't sell it, until the strike is over.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe when the strike is over, all these guys will come out and be like, look what I wrote. I wrote my War and Peace. Look at this masterpiece right here. And then we'll have a glut of new movies. I don't know. So
a couple of years later. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
I mean, that's the thing that people outside of this industry do not understand, and I have had just a little taste of this having my work optioned, is how long it takes from concept to execution. It takes a long time.
Now they're going to be desperate, though. So
are they?
You may see the fast track put on some of this stuff.
Yeah, but this is also, last go around is where we ended up with reality television. That's unscripted.
Well, I think though that what I hope is that because they'll be in need of content quickly, that we'll see a period where there are less tent poles and more mid-budget movies, which I'm always crying out for. Right. Just give me a regular comedy, a drama, something that doesn't need 8 zillion special effects.
Yeah. And speaking of that, you think the CGI is bad now? Wait till they have 2 months to make a whole movie.
Yeah.
All right. My only other news item, unfortunately, is rather sad, but last week we did lose Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens, and I am devastated. The man was 70.
I think that's young.
Listen, yeah, someone who's pushing 60, it's right around the corner.
I think
I brought it up when we covered Pee Wee's Christmas special back in December. Huge Pee Wee's Playhouse fan. Obviously, I mean, this guy took this character from improv to, feature length the movie, and then he had a Saturday morning TV show.
The first time I remember seeing Pee Wee Herman was in the HBO special.
which was on Broadway or off Broadway.
No, I think it was
with Phil Hartman, right?
Yeah.
Phil Hartman was Captain Carl.
I don't know if it was in New York. I think maybe it was in Los Angeles.
Oh, maybe it was. Yeah, because I think he was with the Underlings, was he?
Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing that several
Groundlings.
times. Yeah.
Groundlings. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That had built up such a following that HBO, wanted to check it out and film it, and then they put it on, and that really put that character on the map for a whole generation.
And I will say, obviously, the show on stage was a little more risque than what we got on Saturday mornings.
A lot more risque.
But I will tell you, I had two gentlemen come up to me this week after the news dropped, and they're like, I went looking for the Playhouse episodes to show my kids, and I'm like, I've got both box sets, season 1 and season 2. I'll let you borrow them.
Yeah, they drop on and off of streaming on occasion.
Yeah, I guess there's a few on YouTube.
Yeah, but the Playhouse itself was pretty risque as well. Every time Miss Yvonne showed up, it was like a burlesque show.
And that's actually where we got Lawrence Fishburne. So in honor of Pee-wee, I think we're going to do a secret word of the day. So anytime someone says the word ghost, I'm just going to scream. So
there's going to be a lot of screaming during this episode.
Yeah, well, I picked a word I know we use.
Yeah. But you've got to scream now since you've just announced it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There you go.
So, rest in peace, Pee-wee.
All right. So let's talk about the 2 movies today.
Do we have to?
Haunted Mansion.
Okay. Yes. Haunted Mansion. The second Haunted Mansion. Because they tried this once before.
Let's say the third, because there's also a Muppets version.
Oh, that is true.
And it could be arguable that the Muppets version is the most successful out of all 3 of them.
The Muppets one is the best.
I'll tell you right now, I did go back and watch the Eddie Murphy one after I saw this in the theater, and I didn't even think of the Muppet one. I would have enjoyed that.
Let me tell you, before that, I've only seen the Eddie Murphy one once, and before it was over, I felt like I was the 1000th haunt in the mansion.
The thing about the Haunted Mansion, and I think I talked about this a little bit when we did Muppets Haunted Mansion, which, by the way, people who have Disney Plus, if you haven't watched this, please go and watch it. It is so much fun.
I am so sad that I didn't think of that.
I'm sure it will be advertised heavily again on the Disney Plus homepage once Halloween rolls around, which is right around the corner. So this is, I think, another issue with this one is I think it's just out of season.
Well,
which is weird.
That's an issue. But I think one of the things about Haunted Mansion is, people who sort of outside of the Disney park enthusiasts circle may not be aware that the Haunted Mansion has the most passionate fan base of all the rides. There's so much merch around. I was
going to say the memorabilia and the merches alone is enough to make you realize that this is incredibly popular.
The story behind Haunted Mansion is legendary because it went through so many iterations.
Yes, and if you're going to go to Disney Plus to watch that Muppets version, also look for Behind the Attraction, because they have a Haunted Mansion episode which tells you that whole story.
Sounds like a lot of homework already.
It does. I mean, it covers some of I was going to recommend 2 things, which is there's a book by Jason Surrell. It's his last name is spelled Surrell, and he used to work for Imagineering, and he wrote a book on the Haunted Mansion. The version I have is called From Magic Kingdom to the Movies. I think the subtitle is slightly different now, and it has a different cover, but it's a really comprehensive history of this ride, including a lot of sketches and concept drawings, which, if this is the kind of thing you're into, it's so much fun to read. And then I know for sure I did recommend this, which is the Doom Buggies podcast, DOOMBUGGIES podcast. It is what it sounds like. It is a Haunted Mansion podcast. It only comes out about once a month. I mean, he's been doing it since, I think, 2013.
How much can you talk about this ride?
Well, that's the whole thing. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with this ride. And one of the things that's a real gift, actually, about this podcast is about, I want to say, in 2015, that's how long this podcast has been out. He actually interviewed Rolly Crump, who was one of the original designers of many of the special effects that ended up in the Haunted Mansion, and also he designed the famous wallpaper. There's an interview with him on this podcast. He actually just passed away this year. He was 93 years old. And he was an amazing figure because he'd actually worked directly with Walt. He had come from Disney Animation. He had been an in-betweener. He famously said he had been assigned to put the dots on the Dalmatians in 101 Dalmatians.
Hey, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to draw that blade of grass in the background of Lion King.
He worked with Mary Blair on the design of It's a Small World for the World's Fair. And when they returned to Disney after the World's Fair, they were tossing around these ideas for the Haunted Mansion, and Rolly Crump and Yale Gracie were assigned to sort of like tinker around. They both sort of had this really unique perspective and point of view. And there's a famous story about how there was a big meeting about the Haunted Mansion. Rolly Crump brought these weird drawings that he'd made. Walt was kind of like, I'm not too sure about this stuff. And the next day, Rolly came into his office at 7 a.m, and Walt Disney was sitting in his office in the same clothes that he was wearing from the day before. And he said, and this is a quote from Rolly, "You son of a bitch, I was up all night thinking about these drawings." And he
Mission accomplished.
So at that time, there was an idea that the Haunted Mansion would be a walkthrough, not a ride. Right. And then Walt was so haunted by these strange things that Rolly had drawn that they were going to add it on as the Museum of the Weird. And it was going to be stuff that Rolly Crump and Yale Gracie designed. Now, I've told you this whole story because they're very significant figures in the history of the Haunted Mansion, and also because they have lent their names to two characters in this film. So Alistair Crump, who is the Hatbox Ghost, and Gracie, Mr. Gracie, who's I think in the movie he's William Gracie, right?
Yeah, the homeowner.
The original owner of Gracie Manor, where the action of this takes place. The point, and actually Danny DeVito's character also has the name of a ride designer. His last name is Davis. Mark Davis ultimately ended up designing what we think of as the ride today, Mark Davis and Claude Coates, but they incorporated a ton of Rolly Crump and Yale Gracie stuff into the ride.
So we open in New Orleans. Now, this mansion in the movie is based on the facade of the mansion as it sits in Disneyland in California, which was the original. The ride debuted in 1969, but the facade existed for many years before that because they didn't know what they wanted to do with it, as Christina was just detailing, and then Walt died during that time frame as well. So that put a suspension on things. But in order to appease the Florida fans, because there's lots of people who have never visited Disneyland, but they have Disney World, you do get a little taste of the Florida mansion in here as well, which is the Hatbox Ghost's original home, which is funny to say because he doesn't appear in the Florida attraction. He only appears in the California attraction.
He's not at all?
So
really, I thought this character was like so iconic.
Okay, wait.
Ride.
So there is a story behind the Hatbox Ghost. So it's pretty significant that they used it in the film. I think they almost they had to have him because the Hatbox Ghost was in the original iteration of the ride when it opened. He was not an animatronic figure. He was almost like a statue. He moved just a teeny tiny bit. And basically there was a spotlight that went onto the head. Like you would see his face, and then you would see his face move to his box. But the effect never worked right. So Mark Davis said, after a very short period of time, let's just take him out. But I think the intention was always to make him a key part of the marketing of it, because there was, even when it initially opened, there's kind of all this merchandise and things that sort of surrounded the Hatbox Ghost.
His figure can be seen on the album, on the soundtrack album. You see a sketch of him, which you also see in this movie, on the wall. So there's references to him, and I think it only existed in the ride for like a week before they took it out.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And actually, I'm going to show you guys something. Obviously, our listeners can't see this, but I have Walt Disney's Haunted Mansion book from when I was a child. This is a golden book, and the Hatbox Ghost
You steal that from the library?
No, this was my book.
Is there a library sticker on the front?
This is my book. No, it says a golden book. There's a picture of the Hatbox Ghost in it. And
he's
so
everywhere.
people really grew up thinking that the Hatbox Ghost was a part of this ride.
I'm one of them because I really just expected that this was,
and he wasn't, because it was an effect that didn't work. And then they brought it back, I want to say
in 2015, because we visited Disneyland. I went in 2019 with my family. It was a huge moment to see the Hatbox Ghost in the attic right after the bride scene. Even though it was done over as Nightmare Before Christmas, but he was still there, obviously.
Right.
So we went on this probably at least 6 times and got excited when we went by the Hatbox Ghost every time. And now, from what I'm hearing, he is to be added to the Florida mansion by the end of this year. And I don't know how I feel about that, because it always made that, even before I went to visit, it always made that Disneyland Haunted Mansion stand out. You know, because maybe they deserved to have the Hatbox Ghost and nobody else did, because they were the original. So I was okay with him just living in the California
I'd be disappointed
mansion.
if I went now. And I know we're going to talk about this with Pirates of the Caribbean, that they backtracked and added Jack Sparrow. Because as a kid, that's now synonymous
and
with
that's
pirates.
Probably why they're going to put it into the Florida.
I'd be disappointed if I went and I didn't see the Hatbox
if anybody
Ghost.
Saw this movie and they're like, wait, where's the Hatbox Ghost, right?
Because he does play pretty large in this.
The Hatbox Ghost is such a legendary figure.
Ghost.
Yeah, we said it like 10 times.
I know. I don't want. Listen, you're going to be cutting me out if I do it every time.
And because he is such a legendary figure, you really had to put him in this film in some way. And if you've ever been on this ride, this whole movie is basically an Easter egg of.
Well, yes, correct. I'm going to say, if you're an aficionado of this ride, this movie, it puts you there.
But
again, the only thing it misses is if this was in 3D.
But it's not as much of an Easter egg as that Muppet special is. So if you're an aficionado of the ride, again, go watch that.
Yeah. I can't emphasize this enough. The best version is the Muppets version.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I went back and watched the Eddie Murphy version, which is 2003. So it's 20 years old. And there's a couple times where they hit on, you know, the attraction itself, and look, there's the stretching hallway or the moving picture. But this one really, I mean, I don't think they missed a thing. I mean, again, I've only been there once. You guys go there quite a bit, so you could tell me if it's. I thought the Hatbox Ghost was just like part of this, so I didn't realize that he's not even in the Florida one.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like, people who know the Haunted Mansion, they really know the Haunted Mansion, and I think that in some way was always working against any iteration of this film, because Haunted Mansion fans, I think, are going to be a little more difficult to please. But
I think this is a love letter to that ride. Am I wrong?
But I think that, first of all, I really would have liked to have seen Guillermo del Toro's version of this.
Yeah, let's talk about this, because I didn't realize that until after I started reading notes that he was attached in 2010 to do a reboot.
But maybe this is unfilmable. Maybe it's a blessing that he didn't get to do it, because maybe that would have fallen on its face as well. I think what they have to do here is, as you said, they are trying to please everyone, because this is has a huge fan base. So they're trying to retcon everything that's in the mansion into a cohesive story.
Right.
And the mansion ride itself doesn't really have a cohesive story. You're just seeing scene after scene after scene after scene that don't really tie to each other, except for the fact that they're ghosts. So you've got to make all this make sense.
Oh, yeah. No, sure.
And even the tone of the ride itself, like, it starts off, it's pretty scary for a theme park ride, I'll say, you know, not to like an adult, you know, but like, you go into this room and then the ghost host voice comes out, right? Paul Frees. And then he says, maybe you've noticed you're in a room with no windows and no doors. There's no way out except my way. And then someone screams and you look up and someone has hung themselves from the ceiling. I mean, this is a very intense start to this ride.
Right. And this is where you always hear like at least one child crying in
yeah. Well, there's a reason that Walt was like, yeah, this is a little too much.
So but the thing is, the beginning of the ride is more scary, which is what Claude Coates wanted. And the second half of the ride is more like silly and fun, which is more like Mark Davis's style. And like, if people don't know who I'm talking about, Mark Davis also designed Pirates of the Caribbean, which I feel like is really a Mark Davis ride, just like his spirit, the way he designs things. And he has a very distinct sort of silly, visual, punny style. And so the second half of the Haunted Mansion ride is really like his stuff more. You already have a ride that's sort of a split screen as it is, right? The first half is very intense. The second half is very fun.
Unfortunately, this movie is neither.
Right. And that's the thing. This film doesn't really commit either to being silly or to being scary. It kind of exists in like a really milquetoasty area.
I didn't. The only time I laughed is when Jared Leto's name showed up. And I'm like, oh, Jim's going to have a field day with this one.
He probably did all of his audio dialogue, still in robes from his island, bare feet in the studio. Yeah.
You got a great cast here, too.
Mm-hmm. Totally wasted.
I mean, you have Lightning McQueen, Ahsoka, and Morbius all walked into a haunted house, and yet nothing happens.
So I think the idea was maybe commendable because it's a communal thing, the experience of going on the ride. Any ride at Disney World is. It's not a solitary experience. It's a communal experience, especially because you're jammed with all these people in the stretching room.
Right.
And they're always telling you to step away from the walls, please. So you've got to like get right up on the stranger right next to you. So that kind of felt right, that have all these people,
have all these different characters, all these different
like stuck in the mansion, right? Because that's the way that the ride is as well, that you're stuck with a bunch of strangers. Huge names, great in other films, but it just they don't really mesh or come together, and the characters are very vague as well. Okay, Lakeith Stanfield, who we've seen in great films,
Cherokee Bill,
and then Rosario Dawson. Like their characters' background, those backgrounds are hidden until like 75% into the movie. Like they don't tell you that their spouses have died. Like I don't know if they're holding it back to keep it as a surprise.
It's such a strange thing, to be honest with you. The idea of withholding this information as some kind of character reveal. Because one of the things actually my husband and I were talking about last night is if they had I think if you know how to put two and two together, what's happened to his wife.
Yeah, especially with Ben.
But I'm saying in terms of the story, if they had come forward with the information that his wife has died earlier in the film, I think you could have had a situation where you actually create William Gracie, who is another character who lost his wife, right, and became devastated. And that's why in the mythology of this movie, all these ghosts are here because he was trying to reach his wife. Yeah. He could have been the ghost host for Ben. You could have had a thing where like you see this guy kind of overcoming his grief and solving this mystery at the same time, right? Communicating with Gracie. There would have been a connection there because of their mutual loss. I just think it could have been more enmeshed into the story in an organic way. And then you could have gotten to know Gracie better. You could have gotten to know the ghost in the house better, right? Which would have created potentially more opportunities for comedy. I just think there's a lot of things they could have done with this story.
Yeah, and I think the character would have been more sympathetic than he is. For Gabby, I can see they're trying to throw you a red herring by saying that their marriage has difficulties at the very beginning.
Being dead is difficult.
You could surmise that they just got divorced, right?
Yeah,
and then when the kid says, I talked to my dad, and that won't make my mom happy that I am.
Yeah. I will say the one missed opportunity, which I think would have been a lot, is to just make Eddie Murphy her realtor. Would have been a fun little, just a throwaway gag, so her purse comes down and the Evers and Evers, realtor card comes out. Just something. So,
but okay, the first thing up front is they begin with a narration. Use the dialogue from the ride.
It's not like they're not the copyright holders.
Yeah. Because that would actually generate so much goodwill in your aficionados in the audience. If it seemed like, just like the first one, just seems like a missed opportunity. I don't think it was bad. I wasn't sitting there thinking this is garbage. It was passable. But you want something more than passable if you're passionate about this ride.
So we left and all three of us said, that was cute. Like, it was a cute movie. If I was 8, I would have loved this movie. You know what I mean?
I had one mom, I went to the first showing on Thursday. So it was like 11 o'clock in the morning. And I had a mom with a little girl. And of course, the mom got a Truly. And I'm like, you rock it. But I can't even say that it was cute. It was just, I didn't commit to anything.
But it was
like, oh, look, that's from the ride.
Like you don't love the ride, right? So you didn't even have the kind of like fun recognition of.
Oh, I recognized a lot of the stuff because, like you said, the pop culture references to the 3 ghosts, the hitchhiking ghosts, the stretching hallway, when the pictures start to rise and they got to climb up the wall with the alligators after. Like there was enough that as somebody who didn't go to Disney every 6 months, I knew where they were going and what this was, but it wasn't enough to sustain the movie for me.
There were some deeper cuts in there. Lakeith playing Ben. When Ben shows up at the mansion for the first time, Gabby opens the door and she warns him, you sure you want to do this? To his credit, he does call her out. Like, you couldn't be more specific when I came here earlier to tell me what was going to happen. But a ghost literally follows him home.
Yes.
Which is what they say at the end of the ride right before you get off. A ghost will follow you home. Mm-hmm. And that's why they have to keep coming back to the mansion, or they're just going to be tortured by whoever follows them home. The little things like that went a bit deeper, I did appreciate.
If you look at the history of this current iteration of the film, in a lot of ways, it's almost like the history of the ride, where there were multiple ideas at different times, different people attached and different scripts. And I think that, especially because we're going to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean and we can do an apples to apples comparison. The strength of the Pirates of the Caribbean is they use the ride as a reference, but they establish their own mythology in the film. And they didn't really do that here. You could tell they were trying really hard to cleave to some existing idea of the mansion instead of just creating wholesale a new mythology for the mansion, for the movie. And I think that would have been better. I also think, maybe it would have been better if they didn't try to split the difference so hard with all of these different characters. There's a lot of people in this film, and I'm not 100% sure why.
Well, but even like Father Ken, who's Owen Wilson, like he's a likable character, but then you find out that he's been scamming them the whole time and he really wasn't a priest. And I'm like, that adds nothing to the story.
I think this just goes to show how this is really kind of an unwinnable task, because the first iteration really tried to kind of pave its own way and failed miserably at doing that. So maybe they thought, okay, maybe we will step back from that. Yeah. And that didn't work.
I mean, we're not even talking about Tiffany Haddish, who's basically doing a Miss Cleo. It's like, go to me now. It's like,
and I love Tiffany Haddish.
Yeah, no, again, the cast is fantastic.
I think that she gets, the few laughs that are earned. I think Tiffany gets them.
Yeah. I don't know. Winona Ryder just shows up for a split second.
And that was fun. That was fun.
I know, but it was just
Winona Ryder, Eugene Levy's son, Dan Levy's in it. Yeah. My son watched Schitt's Creek, so he loves Dan Levy. And
the weird thing is, there's all these weird corporate name dropping things that are going on as well, which really like Amazon and CVS and Dollar General and Yankee Candle, like all these weird things that are just kind of thrown out there. It is. It's almost, I go back to the Wayne's World where he's literally holding up a Pepsi can. going, sponsorship. It was bizarre. Not even filmed in New Orleans, by the way. I don't know if either of you have ever been to New Orleans. I've been there 3 times. It is one of my favorite places on the planet. Georgia. They filmed it in Georgia.
I would have liked it if they filmed the actual Haunted Mansion
That
in
would have been
Disneyland.
cool.
That would have been cool.
The vast majority of Disney's filming is actually done in Georgia now.
In Georgia,
They film almost all of their
You could
Marvel
probably get all
movies
kinds of
there.
tax breaks.
They have tax breaks, exactly. They have tax breaks in Georgia, so that's why they film in Georgia.
Now, I just said that Tiffany Haddish owned the comedy, but the biggest laugh I got out of this was Lakeith trying to connect with Travis, the little kid. And he talks about Action Guy, and she's like, "Who's Action Guy?" He's like, "Oh, he had a shoe, and his catchphrase was, 'Say it again, boy,' and he'd hold up the shoe. It was like a discount store figure." And then he brings him a little bit later.
I was gonna say, when was he able to go back home and be like, "Oh, I should probably bring this to this kid"? Because he can chase back to the mansion pretty quick.
Well, they got Dollar Generals everywhere, right? So they
apparently,
probably
they are everywhere. I will tell you that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I am convinced that Danny DeVito is immortal himself. This man does not age. I mean, his hair may turn a little bit grayer, but he is basically the same guy that we've seen since the 70s. It's crazy.
Yep,
yeah, and like again, just like a character that's kind of wasted. Why is he in this movie? Like he's playing like this really broad comedy at the end, which just felt so weird and out of place, especially when there's this there's 2 intensely tragic stories at the center of this film, right? Like Gabby has lost her husband, right? And Ben has lost his wife. And you have this character, the Hatbox Ghost, who I honestly just wanted to be scarier. I really was like, this is such a great concept. This character should be so scary. But he's not as scary as he really needs to be to make this story work.
I agree. I think that if they practically tried to make up Jared Leto, it would have been much more effective than what we got.
No, because he's very, very obvious that it's just a CG character.
This is kind of what I mean, going back to the idea of like there needs to be more direct one-on-one communication with the ghosts, because you can't feel how scary the Hatbox Ghost is unless you're experiencing the terror of the ghosts, right? So Ben is taking these pictures with this device he's created, this special camera that can see, the next dimension or whatever.
That he does not have backup batteries for, apparently.
And then he's like, they look like they're all running from something. But like, that's not the same as like experiencing the terror of the ghosts, right? So if you have the characters communicating directly with the ghosts in the mansion, and they're trying to talk to Ben or to Gabby or whoever, and, explain what's happening. I just think, and then you experience their terror. I just think it would have been more effective. It would have made the Hatbox Ghost a scarier character as well.
It takes a little bit to get the reveal that it's the Hatbox Ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the police sketch is scarier than what actually you see is the Hatbox Ghost a little bit later. Now, here's the question. I missed this completely if they did explain it, and I don't know if they did. How does the Hatbox Ghost end up in this mansion when he has pretty much his own haunted mansion that he lived in? How does he get there?
That is a good question.
Because he killed numerous people in the basement. He had like 1,000 going right there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, wait. Because they explained that it's because he was dead.
All right, go on.
Right? Wait. I'm trying to remember because I saw this more than a week ago. I saw it more than a week ago. They explained because he was dead. Gracie was doing all of these seances and all kinds of things at that mansion.
Oh,
right?
yeah. He was conjuring up all those ghosts, right?
Which let other ghosts through. And one of the ones that came through was Alistair Crump, a.k.a. the Hatbox Ghost.
It just seems like it would have been, I think, worked better if it was all contained into this mansion. So, okay, Gracie was the first owner. Then Crumb lived there
now had to
and killed a million people, right? And then the bride was there. And then to appease the Florida fans, they had to bring in a second mansion somehow. And they probably had to retcon that into the script.
Crump imprisoned Leota in the...
Yeah, Jeff, you were saying, you didn't know if they exactly had every scene. It's not 100%, but I would say 95% of the scenes
there's a lot
are
of
in
stuff
here.
going on. All right.
So like Leota is in there.
Yep.
You get, pretty
Jennifer
much
Tilly played her in the other one.
Yeah, pretty much every character that you see in the dining hall, you see, pass through at some point in the movie.
Candle or on the chandelier.
Yeah, the duelists.
Yeah.
Because they never explain in the beginning how Gabby's character says, I can't pass through this hallway because I get pains in my side.
But she just got there.
I'm like, pains in her side? What is she talking about? And then an hour later, they explain what she meant. Like, it's the duelists.
I thought, I picked up on that because you do see the paintings on either side, but yeah, it's kind of a silly thing. I don't know.
The only things that I didn't catch, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I missed it, were the shadow playing the piano. I didn't see that because you see that in the beginning of the ride, and the hand that's trying to open the coffin, with the raven or the crow on top of it. I didn't see those two scenes, but pretty much everything else.
They're probably in the deleted scenes.
Down to it's actually a Donald Duck face chair that Ben sits in the movie. It's a visual illusion. It's a chair that you see in the ride and actually has Donald Duck's face in it.
No hidden Mickeys in Haunted Mansion?
There are some.
Yes, there are.
There are.
Now, are there any in this movie?
Right, that's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll have to.
That means we'd have to go back and rewatch it again, and I'm not willing to do that. I will tell you, I got caught up in watch. There was only a handful of people in my theater, and one of them was an elderly gentleman with his aide, his live-in aide or whatever. He got up to use the restroom 7 times, and after the 3rd time, the aide sat in the seat and let him go by himself. And the man was gone for like 5-6 minutes. And he comes back and I loudly hear him say, I can't find it. I'm like, how are they even keeping track of what's going on in this movie?
I just want to say, though, we went to this movie last week. We went opening weekend. The theater wasn't like super full, but it had probably like 3 full rows of people in it. The people who went to this movie apparently never saw a movie before because
they were entertained.
They were gasping at things like.
But that's what you want. That's.
But fine. I'm happy for them. Okay,
yes, correct.
But this movie was so predictable. I was saying lines in my head before they were said on screen because you know what they're going to say next, right? And at the end, when he finds the cat and the cat's name is Tater Tot, the woman next to us went, like you didn't see that comment.
Like, well played. Well played.
Tater Tot. Meanwhile, why don't you go back and hang out with Gabby? Now you got a cat ghost that may be your dead wife.
I must have had a relation of those people sitting behind me because it was a solitary viewer and she was gasping at various parts. But the first time I noticed it, I'm like, I'm going to be in for a treat here, was when at the very beginning, when Lakeith has taken over the walking tour. Yeah. And he says something to the effect, life is dirt, we're all dirt. She goes, like, how dare you? Like that kind of a gasp. Yeah.
I don't like this man at all.
By the way, like Mary Lou Henner was one of the members of the tour.
Yeah,
like,
that was a weird.
There were so many weird little cameos.
He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, she's not even in the scene with Danny DeVito. That was a wasted opportunity.
It is a wasted opportunity. I want to know, because this guy had to have been doing the tour for a while. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, your Yelp reviews have got to be just crap. Why people are still coming for you to take them on tour? I have no idea. Yeah, don't believe in ghosts. Don't believe in ghosts. All right, find another job, dude.
So the interesting thing here, though, is of course it's pivoted to the main evil character being the Hatbox Ghost, as we've discussed over and over and over again here. Right. But in the Muppets version, and I believe in the Eddie Murphy version, it's been a long time, so correct me, Jeff, it's the bride that's the
the
main
bride
villain.
Was, the main guy who owned the mansion. His wife was a ghost. Right, he was basically trying to get busy with Eddie Murphy's wife because she looked like the dead bride.
Like using that, like I said, using the Hatbox Ghost is such a good play because he is such a kind of legendary character for the fans of the ride, but I just don't think he was used that effectively. I think the story is really a mishmash. Like you have all these different things going on. And I do think this film is overcrowded. It just doesn't need this many characters.
Yeah. Again, I think it's because of the communal spirit of the ride.
I like
somehow
that.
think
if that
it's tied
somehow
to that.
ties into that. I like that idea. Unfortunately, I agree. It doesn't go anywhere. I don't care for any of the characters. It just, man.
So the whole end game of the Hatbox Ghost is he needs to get 1,000 ghosts, and he's at 999, just like they tell you in the ride. And what happens if he gets 1,000?
Then
he rules the world.
He becomes the king of everything.
I guess. I don't know. He's already got pretty much everything he needs. He's not coming back to life.
He's like head ghost, number one ghost in the world.
But he's already number one ghost.
He is.
Yeah.
I don't know. He gets his own island and his own.
Jared Leto.
And the thing is toward the end, you start to feel like they're really trying so hard to cram in any reference if you haven't already seen it. Like, look, here's the caretaker with his dog. Like, anything they haven't.
Like the chair sequences. I mean, is that what the ride? Did they look like those wickered chairs?
In a roundabout way.
Okay, that's the only reason I felt that was even in there.
And they do tip back. They do tip back.
Right, that it was simulating the actual ride.
I just do feel like by the end of the movie, they're just like, how many references can we get in at the end here that we haven't managed to get in already? I just didn't feel like any great emotional resolution, which I think you would want to feel in a story about a widower trying to come to grips with his wife's death.
Yeah, who doesn't believe in ghosts?
Yeah. Honestly, like I was thinking about, and I was comparing this to, I don't know if you guys remember the Casper movie that came out.
Oh yeah,
several years ago.
Yep.
Which I think threaded this line a little better. It was clearly more kid friendly, but that's a movie that's like, it's sort of funny and it's sweet and it has a genuine, like intense emotional resolution at the heart of it. That's really what this movie was missing.
I have less memory of that than I do the Eddie Murphy version of this, the Haunted Mansion.
A dead child.
But I think that you could have, the thing that movie does better is it sort of limits the number of people, right? So you can keep the emotional story focused. And again, I think that's like a fair, like kind of apples to apples comparison. Again, too, like, who are they trying to appeal to with this movie? Is it for younger kids? Is it for, is it supposed to be like a PG-13 crowd? Is it, who are they going for? Like, I just don't think you can have a movie that like doesn't have an audience in mind.
Right. Yeah. And my son
trying too hard to appease everybody.
My son, Haunted Mansion is far and away his favorite ride in Disney. So that's the reason we go on it 10 times when we go there, is because he drags us back on as soon as we're done. And he was really looking forward to see, in comparison to the other movies we bring him to a lot of the times for this podcast, he was really looking forward to see this. And he had never seen Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, before. And again, that's probably his number 2 ride at Disney. So we watched that the night before we went to see Haunted Mansion. So of course, as we walked down, I'm like, okay, which one was better? He's like, Pirates, definitely.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is when I went to go watch Pirates on Disney Plus, they already have a graphic up for the Haunted Mansion. And I wish I had taken a screen grab of it because it actually said that it was going to start streaming July year 3000. So maybe not quite tomorrow. It's gone now. I just pulled it up.
One thing I do want to say, not about the movie, but about the ride specifically, and this ties to our second feature, is they both the Haunted Mansion ride and Pirates of the Caribbean have famous theme songs. In Haunted Mansion, it's Grim Grinning Ghosts. In Pirates of the Caribbean, it's Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me. And both of them have lyrics written by X Atencio.
Now, is that a play on existential? Because I always read it like that. Existential.
Oh, no, that's his name.
That is his real name.
His name was Xavier.
Oh, X.
So his name was Xavier Atencio, and
existential.
So he just went. He just went by X. The lyrics for Haunted Mansion are so fun because they tell you what's happening in the ride, right? They basically tell you not to be afraid, that it's all for fun, and that it's such a great theme because again, it's sort of played You just sort of hear the organ music at the beginning of the ride, really.
Yeah. And it's creepy and it's fun at the same time, which this movie did not succeed in doing.
I was gonna say, I wish that this movie had told me to be entertained.
Yeah, but in the song, like, they tell you, like, don't close your eyes and don't try to hide, or a silly spook will sit by your side, right? They're telling you, like, it's okay. I know it seems a little creepy, but, like, it's really fun. In the song, they say they pretend to terrorize. Grim grinning ghosts.
Yeah, it's not that scary. It's like, it's not that scary, kids. Yeah.
Right. Right. So, they actually probably would have been better off going for a Scooby-Doo vibe with this, where you can sort of say, like, it's a little scary, but it's also fun,
which is what that Muppets special does.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yes. Let's just say everybody go watch the
Muppets.
They don't
Get this movie. Don't waste your time.
They do try to work a story in, but they do not overanalyze it, and it is just a fun ride. So just like the experience of being on the ride, they hit it the closest out of the 3 adaptations. The Muppets hit it the closest. Most movie audiences would agree with us. Out of a budget of what is being said to be 150 million, it's only made 42 thus far, and we're in its second weekend right now. And like I said, it was in the smallest theater in my megaplex, so it probably won't be there in 2 weeks' time.
No, I'm gonna say probably sooner rather than later. This is gonna drop on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
It will. I give it a month.
Again, as we were saying, it was originally going to be a Guillermo del Toro vehicle,
starring Ryan Gosling.
I remember when this was announced, and I was really excited because I just thought, who could, like, really get at the heart of this ride, better than Guillermo del Toro. And of course, the design would have been amazing.
Oh, yeah, that would have been undeniable. Because he was set to not only direct, but to write and produce. And then as the years went on, then he cut back to writing and producing. But then that even fell away because Disney thought it was too scary what he had written.
Well, they should have gone with it.
The thing is,
just like Walt, not take a step back and think about it. Yeah.
Well, that was the whole thing. People always talk about, like, Walt Disney. They talk about the Disneyification of things, right? They say things are saccharine or whatever, but Walt was never like that. If you look at some of those old Disney movies, the animated movies, they are scary. They are, sad. Like because
you didn't placate the kids. You treated them like adult.
You treated them like, you acknowledge the reality of the world. But one of the things that Rolly Crump talked about was that Walt was always kind of looking for somebody who thought a little bit different. Walt was a risk taker. I think people think of Disney as like a big behemoth now, where everything is so conservative. But Walt Disney throughout his career was a risk taker who was always
the Seven Dwarfs was a huge gamble.
It was always investing in sort of the next thing and always trying new things and always trying to push things forward. And that was one of the things about the Haunted Mansion was he was really willing to, like, take a chance on it, right? And be like, let's try this. Let's try this.
Once he went in.
Let's see what happens. And I think it's so disappointing that this film wasn't made in the spirit I think that Walt would have liked, right? Like, try to make something fresh and different.
It's interesting that a whole movie devoted to ghosts is spiritless. Profound.
Some of the
crickets for that one.
A lot of the reviews.
We both. It was a bad ooh.
I don't care. I got to react.
A lot of these reviews that I've been reading have that kind of a headline sensationalism.
You got to live for the headline, right? If you're going to write it. Yeah.
The best one that I read, and it's almost mirrors what we've been saying. Washington Post. It's too dark for a family film, too weightless and juvenile for grown-ups. In a season notable for high-level action spectacle and important auteur projects, Haunted Mansion is not just confused, but inconsequential.
That pretty much says it.
In order to promote this, the cast appeared on Celebrity Family Feud. That sounds like it would have been more fun than watching this.
Let's get Steve Harvey on in the Haunted Mansion.
And it premiered in Disneyland, but because of the actors' strike going on, nobody could walk the red carpet. So they had the mascot characters walk the red carpet. So Mickey, Minnie, and then a lot of the villains in costume. But aren't they considered actors?
I was going to say, aren't they?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think they're scabs now.
Yeah, no, that somebody was there with red paint on the red carpet waiting to throw it on Mickey Mouse. Scab! All right. How many buckets? How many hat boxes would we give to the Haunted Mansion?
I am giving this a solid 2.
2.
Not
so solid, might I add.
No, yeah. I mean, I could go lower, but it's pretty solid. It just didn't do anything. Yeah. Very disappointing.
I'm going to be a little kinder than that. I'll go 2 3/4. Again, it was
But you also have an affection for the ride and can at least appreciate the callbacks.
Yes, that is true.
And I'm going to say 2.5 for the same reason. Basically, like, yes, I was like, oh, look at this is from the ride. That is from the ride. You know, I have read the book. I've listened to the podcast. I've seen the documentaries. Like, I have a shirt that has the Haunted Mansion wallpaper on it. You know, I am a fan. I would have liked to seen more from this film. And I'm sad because, like we said, I like everybody involved in this film. There's not a single performer in this film that is not a person, you know, that I like all of these actors and other things. I just think they're really wasted on this film.
A lot of wasted opportunity.
Well, let's not make our concession trip a wasted opportunity. Jeff, this is like a drum roll. What have you chosen? It's you this week.
Oh, I brought nothing. I didn't know it was my turn. We didn't talk about it. Surprise.
I am the captain of the good ship. Pleasure, come join my crew in search of a treasure. That treasure has been sighted from the old crow's nest. Be prepared to find what you like best. There's candy for you of quality fine. In fact, an assortment that is so divine. The soda from the soul. Just name your brand. The ice cream is delicious and it's right at hand. If it's popcorn you want, well, take my cue. We have the very finest in the world for you. Just steer a course straight up the aisle. We'll have an intermission for a little while.
Sorry, I dropped the ball on that one.
Who said, Jeff, that it was their favorite part of somebody you know that actually listens to us that said it was their favorite part of the show?
My buddy Jeff Gauss, Goose, who's listening, he did tell me that he really enjoys the concession stand. So sorry, Goose, I don't have anything this week.
There's not much to be said about a giant turkey leg, but that seems to always be in the park. So maybe we'll all take one on our way from Haunted Mansion, walking over to Adventureland, where we will find Pirates of the Caribbean. And thankfully, there's never really a long line for this ride. On occasion, when the parks have been super crowded, yes, there is a wait time, but I don't think I've ever waited more than 15 minutes to get on Pirates of the Caribbean.
So Pirates, there's names for different types of rides if you know about theme park stuff, and Pirates of the Caribbean is like a continuous loader, right? Like basically like one group gets off and then like the other group gets on.
But at least they stop. The Haunted Mansion, they don't even stop. You've got to run to get into your tomb buggy. They're like, go, go, go.
And actually, we were talking about this last night. I should have talked about this during the Haunted Mansion portion, but the first time my son, who was 5, ever rode the Haunted Mansion, it did stop when we were in the graveyard, usually because they're trying to load somebody who's in a wheelchair onto the ride or off of the ride. So they have to pause the ride so that that person can get on and off. And we were in the cemetery, and it was right in front of like this head that keeps popping up like over and over and over again. Like it's funny, but not when you've seen it like 25 times.
So you weren't like Will Ferrell in Elf when he's doing the Jack in the Box, and every time it comes up,
I will tell you the same thing happened to us on Pirates, though, 2009 when we were there. It was a late night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And we got stuck right in front of the waterfall with Davy Jones, Dead Men Tell No Tales, for 45 minutes.
Oh, the suspense must have been killing you because you couldn't even go down over the waterfall.
That repeats itself every 6 minutes, not even. My kids are traumatized. My poor son, if I bring that up right now, he'll curl up in a ball. I think he actually fell asleep in the boat.
We did get stuck for maybe 10 minutes in the mansion, right overlooking the dining room. So that is the one space I would have wanted to be stuck at.
So many things to look at.
There are, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good place. But I've always loved this ride. The Disneyland version is a little bit different from the Disney World version.
It's longer. It's longer. So I wasn't aware of that when we went on to the Disneyland version, and the queue is totally different. The outside facade of the building doesn't even look like it's a ride. And the boats actually ride past the queue at one point when you get into the building. Some of the rides mirror each other in California and Florida, but that's not the case with Pirates. It's a different experience. Because the beginning of the ride is much longer as well as the end.
And I do feel like Pirates of the Caribbean really feels like a Mark Davis ride to me. I mean, he was the main designer, and it just has his sensibility. But even the way the faces of the characters, they look like Mark Davis illustrations. We know that the Disneyland version of the ride was the last ride that Walt Disney actively worked on before he died. He died 3 months before the ride opened, but he had, played a very key part in bringing it forward. So it wasn't like Haunted Mansion, which was basically unfinished when he passed, because they really hadn't worked out the concept completely. And in this film, they have some visual references to the ride.
Yeah, there's a couple
throughout. Yeah. They're sprinkled mostly in Tortuga. Tortuga is where you're going to see the most of them. But for the most part, they really just decided that they were going to make a fun pirate movie.
Yeah.
There were a lot more Easter eggs originally in the script, and Eisner got cagey about it because of the failure of Country Bears the year before. And he was actually going to throw this movie out because of the Country Bears.
Well, once they started seeing Johnny Depp and dailies, I think they were really like, what is this guy doing?
The film opens and closes with the theme song, which I like.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Just a little acknowledgement of the song. Dun, 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 dun. But absolutely legendary introduction to Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, no,
truly
fantastic.
One of the great character introductions of all time.
When he steps off the sinking boat onto the dock. I haven't seen this movie probably in about 10 years, the original Pirates. Again, I'd never watched it with my son. This was the first time. That was the one scene that stuck out most in my memory, is him stepping onto the dock. Nothing else. Barbossa, the skeletons, nothing. It was that scene.
That reveal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I guess
to Port Royal, Mr. Smith.
I guess your son didn't go through a pirate phase. My son went through a very intense pirate phase from I want to say about 2 to 10. He was really into pirates. When he was little, I used to go outside and draw pirate maps for him on the sidewalk, long pirate maps, with all these different places for him to go and things to encounter. When we went to Disney World for the first time, I guess, like I said, he was 5. We were going into Disney, and when you go in a certain route, there's a sign over it says Walt Disney World, and underneath it says where dreams come true. And he said, my dream is to become a pirate. And
is that working out for him?
And we took him, because there used to be a place where you could get ghost pirate makeup put on in the park. And we did that for him. And when we were leaving, he was like, my dream came true.
Aww.
So Pirates, I've watched this movie. I can't tell you how many times I've watched this movie.
This is
I didn't even need to. I didn't even need to watch it for this show. I could have recited it to you by heart.
Oh, my wife was reciting it. We haven't watched it. We used to watch this a lot as a kid when the kids were younger. And I will tell you, I avoided this movie like the plague for quite a few years because it was based on a theme park ride.
Really? That's the reason.
I just completely dismissed it. And then we had friends. No, you really need to watch it. So I don't think I saw it until it dropped on DVD.
You see, and I think that the memory of the first movie diminished for me because of the sequels, which I became less and less enamored of.
Correct.
So,
too much Jack Sparrow is too much Jack Sparrow. You got to take them in doses. Although, the original trilogy of Verbinski's three movies really kind of hold up together, as one story arc. But yeah, once you start getting into Dead Men Tell No Tales and
the last two are not as good, but the Verbinski series, and this is one of the things that I mentioned when we were talking about the last Indiana Jones film, is like these are really powered by Gore Verbinski's direction. He has a very energetic style. Yeah. He does a lot of like little almost visual jokes. He keeps everything very interesting so that you're never just watching a rote action scene.
Yeah, and it's not like there's any fancy camera work going on, but it's enough that there's enough, frenetic energy, not only just Johnny Depp's performance, which is completely over the top, and you're taken away by him, but like even like that early fight sequence between him and Will Turner, the sword fighting, it's enough to keep you like, all right, this is, but you mentioned the score alone is enough to elevate it to the next level.
And the pirate film was not a proven commodity at the time that this was released. Like the last big one was with that disaster Cutthroat Island, right? So
that's going back to.
So that's another reason I think that Eisner was caged. So this kind of smashed all the low expectations that even Disney put upon it. Speaking of Gore Verbinski. It wasn't until years after this movie that I realized that he wasn't some famous Russian director that they plucked out of Siberia. He's from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. He's
really,
so he's got quite a bit of a fancy name for an Oak Ridge boy. So,
so before we go forward, I think it's one of the things about the ride and about this film too. It's important to know that the whole idea of the pirate as sort of presented in pop culture was basically created by Robert Louis Stevenson when he wrote Treasure Island. So that is literally the template for like pop culture pirate. He literally created the idea of buried treasure. Well, he literally created X marks the spot. Like these things did not exist before he wrote Treasure
and think
Island.
Of the illustrations. I don't know who the illustrator was. It wasn't N.C. Wyeth.
So the deserted tropical islands, one-legged pirates, like the parrot on the shoulder, it all comes from Robert Louis Stevenson. So like that whole sensibility is seeped throughout this. And I think that that's one of the things that makes it fun is because you can just accept that you're watching a fantasy, right? It's a fantasy from top to bottom. There's no sense of like this is reality, whatever, blah blah, right? Like nobody's talking about historical pirates here. You're talking about like a fantasy of a pirate. I think that is one of the things that makes it fun, but also makes it easier to accept the magical elements of this story, because the crew of the Black Pearl are cursed to never die.
And Gore Verbinski did have a point. He did not like the title, the subtitle, The Curse of the Black Pearl, because as he points out, the pearl itself isn't cursed. It's the Aztec gold that's cursed, but that doesn't pop, as a subtitle, The Curse of the Aztec Gold. One of the main characters, the little girl at the beginning, is Elizabeth, who we see grown a little bit later, who is singing Yo Ho, Yo Ho, Pirate's Life for Me.
Only 8 years later. That was 8 years ago?
Well, yeah, she's still a young woman when we're introduced to her as an adult.
She's not a 16-year-old, I'm sorry.
But it looks like Jack is finally...
I think she's supposed to be 18, right?
Soon after she sings the song, she spies Jack, who has pushed Rose off of the headboard and is floating himself now towards the pirate ship. He's floating on a piece of wreckage of his own ship that's been attacked. And
Will Turner, we're talking about.
Will Turner. And so... Okay. They grab the kid, the crew of the initial boat grabs the kid, and you've got also Jonathan Pryce doing his best Captain Hook, because he's got that, that flowing wig that he's got on.
When do you officially change your wig from brunette to gray?
I think there's an age where you got...
Because somewhere in between this flashback and the current timelines, he changes his hair color, and I'm like, all right, I guess. Well, I'm old now. I might as well wear a white wig.
But as the action is going on between the crew and the pirates, Elizabeth is charged with looking over Will Turner, who was unconscious, who they've pulled him up off this plank, and she sees the medallion on him, which is, as we learn later, is a piece of the cursed Aztec gold. But because he is not someone who actually stole from the chest, the curse isn't on him. You actually have to steal the gold from its original place in order for there to be a curse on you. So she actually takes it. He thinks for years that he just lost it, once he went overboard, but she's actually been keeping it. And she says a little bit later, well, I didn't want them to kill. They wouldn't have killed him, if he
was a kid. Yeah.
Just a little kid.
Would have been a little harsh.
So
you say that, except in the third movie, they hung a little kid because they were killing anybody who was associated with pirates.
You are right. I do remember that.
Mm-hmm. So maybe he would have died. Maybe she was right.
Maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll never know now.
Yeah.
She did what she had to.
So then flash forward and, she's still got the medallion.
Yeah.
She's been keeping it all these years, and she's got to, scramble to hide it whenever somebody comes into her room.
Yeah. Yeah. She brings it out every now and again and just kind of swoons over. I do like the relationship between these two because they are obviously very smitten with each other, but because of her station in life, he is not allowed to.
Well, he's basically a foundling, right? Like, he has no parentage. He was probably apprenticed to this blacksmith when he was very young, and
which isn't right. When he presents Swan with the sword that they're going to give Norrington, he's like, "Oh, beautiful craftsmanship. Make sure you tell your boss nice work." And he did it, but he's just like, yeah. People appreciate it when they are told they did good work. It's like, all right, Will. And Orlando Bloom was coming right off of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he's going from one huge franchise and jumping right into the next one here. So unfortunately, his career slowed down a bit after, and he was just really known for the Lord of the Rings and Pirates. But if I see that damn Gran Turismo trailer one more time with him in
it, he's a video game. You can't put him out there.
I'm like, when is this damn movie coming out? They'll stop showing this trailer?
It's going to show up on Discovery Channel.
Do you pronounce it Nissan? I'm like, I've been saying it wrong all these years. I've been saying Nissan.
Nissan. He
says Nissan.
Yeah, I think he said it wrong. I don't know. But Keira Knightley, she really, this is what kind of made her, because before that,
she's in Bend It Like Beckham.
That was her claim to fame. And this was like the first big movie, I think, that
I will tell you, she was also one of Padme's handmaids in Phantom Menace.
I find her hard to take sometimes, although I think she's most tolerable here. Because I just think she's, and I was thinking, remember when we did Dune and Christina, when you were talking about, what's the actress's name in Dune that plays the mother, who's very, her dialogue was all delivered very breathily, and this annoyed you, and I forget her name. Damn it!
I don't remember because I've wiped Dune from my mind.
Yes,
go ahead.
So
that's how I feel about Keira Knightley. She's always like with her lips parted, like she's posing for the camera, and it always looks like right before her scene, she like grabs the wax lips and puts them in. Because
now she can just get them tattooed.
I think. When I first saw this film, I felt the same way about her. Like I didn't quite see her appeal in this movie, although I had liked her in Bend It Like Beckham. But as the series went on and I became more invested in like this absolute tragedy of their romance, I ended up liking her more. But I think though, what's nice about her character here is she is not a wilting flower,
No, not at all. No, she's a very strong-willed character.
She really tries to step up. She never sort of accepts her situation. She's always trying to look for a way out. She's not waiting for somebody to rescue her. And
she is a Princess Leia.
I'm just saying she needs to close her mouth or she's going to get flies going in there.
I'm sure she probably did. But even like when they're on the ship and they're being chased by the Black Pearl, she's the one, like she's a pirate nerd. Like she's like, oh, I've read all the books. I know all about you. Like she's the one who figures out how to evade them. And I'm like, they're all pirates. You get
the pirates always talk a big game. We pillage, we burn, but you always know she's never in any physical harm because you're watching a Disney movie, and compounded with the fact that these are skeletons, so they cannot. I
don't know. I think that's pretty scary. Well, I'm watching it through my child's eyes when we first, when she's on the ship and Barbossa basically tells you better be afraid of ghosts because you're in, or a scary story because you're in one. And then that whole reveal that they are, in fact, undead. That's a fun. They're throwing her on a trampoline, but it was still a fun little scene. But yeah, I don't think you felt that they were actually going to kill her.
No, or
She thought they were going to
or force her to eat naked at one point, like Barbosa
yeah, they were very
tells her.
disappointed
Yeah,
that didn't happen. She's like, fine, I'll put on the dress. I do like those two characters, the Abbott and Costello of Pirate Ghosts, by the way.
Oh, and they
Pintel and Ragetti.
They have one of my favorite. First of all, my favorite scenes, but one of my favorite lines in the movie is later in the movie when they're pretending to be lost women at sea,
yes,
I guess,
right.
in this little boat, and he says, "This is just like what the Greeks done at Troy, except they were in a horse. Not in dresses."
Yeah. So close. Is it called parlay? Parsley? Parsnip?
Yeah,
we actually do the little hello pulpit.
We should just say there's really no plot, because the plot is get who they think is Bootstrap Bill Turner's son, child, right? They think it's Elizabeth because she has the gold. Bring her to the treasure, cut her a hand so that this curse can be broken on them. They realize it doesn't work. It's not the right person. And then you basically have like what amounts to like an intermission before they come back to do the same thing again.
So again, as good as this is, it could easily lose 25 minutes to 30 minutes because I think it has one too many like onboard full-on battles. Like by the time the battle, I'm like, I've seen it's skeletons now, yes, but I've seen this twice already in the movie. Let's wrap things up now. So just like anything else, I think it is a bit overlong. It gives you a bit too much.
Yeah, I was surprised when I actually popped it in. I'm like, wow, this is like two hours and a quarter. It's
and
like,
actually, because for me, the most fun part of the final scene is the scene where Jack Sparrow's fighting Barbosa. So it's like, I don't even care what's happening on the ship.
You're along for the ride. This is this is up there. Yeah, this is a very entertaining, very enjoyable movie. Like I said, we're watching it as a family the other night, and my wife is we have not seen this in years, and she's reciting dialogue.
I mean, the thing that I really like about this film, and that continues through the initial trilogy, Will and Jack seem to have an understanding that I don't think that Will is entirely comfortable with, because it implies that he thinks like a pirate. But so often you see Jack kind of say something or give him a look, and Will just seems to understand instinctively what is expected of him. And you see that continue later in the trilogy.
But Jack says to him at one point, like, for somebody that hates pirates, you act an awful lot like a pirate, mate.
Once he finds out that he is in fact descendant of a pirate. But even like that scene where they're sneaking on the boat underwater, using the boat as like an air bubble. He's like, this is either madness or brilliance. And he's like, it's amazing how often those two collide. It's like Jack, that could be said about his performance, Johnny Depp's performance. Yeah, and exactly what I mentioned before. The studios were like, what is this guy doing? What is this?
And they had no idea that audiences would take to him that way.
And I think if you watch the movie like later on, I think they kind of lean into it, because there is a scene with Gibbs and Will and Jack says something, he's kind of looking up in the air, and then he walks away, and then the two of them just kind of look at each other and then look up to like what Jack was looking at, like what's he looking like? They're at least embracing the fact that
they're acknowledging his performance. But I don't know if this is true, but I want it to be so true, is that execs came down from on high, and their notes were like, we're not sure if he's acting drunk or gay or both.
All of the above.
Yeah, and they even again they do a callback where Gibbs is telling him the story about him being stranded on the island, and he straps on turtles, and he went mad from the heat, and he's like, oh, that's what this is all about. Like,
Norrington keeps saying that, this is the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
Yes,
and
great.
Sparrow's like, but you have heard of me.
And then at the end, he's like, that is by far the best pirate I have ever seen.
Yeah, his aide, right, says that's got to be the best pirate I've ever seen. After he steals the interceptor because he did this little performance making them think he was going to steal the bigger ship. And then they sail up having made the ship ready for sail, and him and Will just hop on that ship and go. So It's not in this film, right? It's in the second or third film, but somebody says, like, do you think he plans it all out or does he just make it up as he goes along?
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the really fun things about this character. And I think that's one of the things that lends itself to this kind of direction that I was talking about with Gore Verbinski, where you sort of see Jack almost like a Looney Tunes character going through these kind of like Rube Goldberg creations in his mind, where he causes like a cascading series of things to happen so that he can get to his final result. I think that is one of the things that really distinguishes this movie and just makes it so much fun to watch.
Yeah, it is infinitely rewatchable. It is very enjoyable. And I only think it's not until like the second movie that you even find out that the compass only works when you're wishing for the
points
most
toward what you want.
Right. That's never explained in this movie at all.
Yeah. It's such a significant object that Jack never loses it. You always see where it is, which makes me think that like Rossio and Elliott, who wrote this, and they also wrote Treasure Planet, I think that they were already thinking about a further mythology because he never ever loses track of this object. And you always see where it is. You always see like, can I have my effects, right? And then when somebody else does take it from him, he gets it back. And then throughout the rest of the film, you see it tied to his waist. It's tied to his belt for the rest of the film. So you know that this is an important object, even if it appears to be broken. So I think that they might have been already thinking further about like how they could develop this mythology more.
So they establish at the beginning, because the pirates think that they need Elizabeth's blood because they think that she's the relation to Turner, because that one piece of gold that she has calls out to them when she goes in the water.
Into the water, right.
It sets off a shockwave of some kind. And so are they still attuned to it? They must be, because they go right after her.
Right, because they show up like that next night.
Yeah.
So, and that is the last piece.
Right.
That is the very last piece. That's the only one that they've been sitting around just waiting for it to show up.
So now they've only been cursed for like just a matter of years. It's not like it's decades or anything, right? So they've gone back and traced everywhere where they spent that money.
Apparently.
Because they say they spent it all.
Yeah.
But they somehow get it all back.
Yeah. That's a nice little speech Barbossa gives. I will say that Jeffrey Rush does a fantastic job as this character.
It's insane, like that. To me, I remember seeing the preview for this and being like, Academy Award winner Jeffrey Rush is going to be in the Pirates of the Caribbean.
And he just eats it up. I mean, he just, and I'm not to, ruin it, but, he dies at the end. But then at the end of the second one, he comes back and it's a great reveal that he's back and he's eating the apple. Like you wanted to see him to at least sate his appetite with that apple before he died.
I think one of the things about Jack Sparrow in this movie is like, because he acts so goofy, a lot of times people really underestimate him, but he's very single-minded. And when he shoots Barbossa at the end, he was waiting for that. Yeah. He's like, this guy, led a mutiny and stole my ship.
Yeah, but because he knew that Will had the last piece and cut his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And back to your point where it's like, all right, is this guy just like winging it or is he planning it out? Like you never really know, but you have to assume that there's a reason that he survived this long, that he's maybe smarter than anyone's given him credit for.
Again, that Will sort of instinctually understood what he wanted in that moment without him actually saying, this is the plan. But that look on Jack's face when Barbossa is dying, I'm like, this is a guy who has been waiting for his revenge.
Yeah.
He just seems like a clown, but he has wanted to get back at this guy who stole the most important thing in the world to Jack Sparrow.
Yeah. And early on that he's on that mission because when he points the gun at Will, he says, please move. This is not meant for you. Yeah. And you're like, ooh, who's it meant for then?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You won't find that out until a little bit later.
No.
But let me ask you this. Something that I didn't get, right? So they didn't know that Bootstrap had a kid, right? Or did they?
No,
they didn't, because they didn't know if it was Elizabeth or not.
Because Elizabeth uses the last name Turner. And so they're immediately like, oh, that's got to be his daughter. But I'm like, what? He's the only Turner on the planet?
I forget which one of the Abbott and Costello duo were telling the story how Bootstrap, nothing that they were doing sat well with him. So they threw him overboard, right, to his death. Like, oh, it's ironic, really, because we needed his blood in order to reverse the curse. He's cursed, too. How did they get blood from him?
They couldn't. Oh, no, they couldn't. Could they?
He's a skeleton.
Well, that was the other thing too. When they were first attacking not Tortuga, but near Port Royal, and she dumps the bedchamber on him, the bed heater, like he screams.
The bedpan.
But you're undead, so that wouldn't hurt you in any way, shape, or form. So I don't know. But we also find out in the second movie that Bootstrap made a deal with Davy Jones, so he wasn't really dead anyways. And I don't know. I think
don't think super hard.
I know. I know.
I said, you really have to kind of just be like, this is a fantasy, and like it's just full of fantasy elements, and it's not something to be contemplated too deeply. Certainly, by the time you get
that
to
about any movie, to be
certainly by the time you get to the third movie, where the mythology has gotten really convoluted. And it's like, if you think about this too hard, it's all going to crack open. So just enjoy the fun of it. But I do think it's, like I said, sort of weighty enough for your attention to be engaged. It's not just a dumb movie. It's strange to me that there haven't been more successful pirate movies, but it really is a genre that appeared to be cursed.
No pun intended, huh?
In its own way. Yeah, not just Cutthroat Island, but I was thinking of Roman Polanski's Pirates. I don't know if you guys remember that movie.
No.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Or even Pirates of the Penzance.
Well, that was popular as a musical,
right.
You know, because it's a Gilbert and Sullivan.
Well, at this point, you can't do a pirate movie because you don't have Jack Sparrow. I think that any movie would fail if it doesn't have a Jack Sparrow in it. So, because everybody, I think, would just automatically compare it to Pirates of the Caribbean.
So that's it. The genre's dead.
That's dead. Yeah. You can't get any better than Jack Sparrow.
No, I agree with that.
Talking about Easter eggs. I love the line, you know, because you get the famous scene at the beginning when Jack is first arrested and he's in the jail, and all the prisoners are trying to get the dog with a bone, because the dog has the key in its mouth. And Jack says, "You can do that as much as you want; it'll never move." And
right, which is a clever little nod.
Yeah, because Johnny Depp himself says, you know, he grew up in Florida, so he was a visitor to Disney World. And
how bizarre is it now that he goes there and sees his character?
Yeah,
I doubt that he goes there, though.
You think so? You don't think?
Well, you know, that was the thing. So for the promotion for Dead Men Tell No Tales, he actually appeared on the California ride. They took out the first appearance of Jack Sparrow that had been in the ride, and Johnny Depp appeared on the ride and interacted with
in character.
The fans in character, which honestly at that time had to have been pretty amazing.
But how many people would just think that this was a really good actor? Yeah. Like nobody would actually, I would never in my wildest dreams, even if the guy was 100% convincing that was actually Johnny Depp.
Right.
That guy's really good.
Yeah. His wife's like, there's no way that's Johnny Depp. Honey, I would know. That's not Johnny Depp. I'm still upset about this damn open sore he has on his face that just never goes away.
Well, that's like
you should probably get that looked at.
Is that like scurvy or something? That's probably a nightmare for the continuity person. You know,
because I guess as the movie goes on, or the series, it gets bigger. It's like, yeah, I mean, he had a lot of say in the look of what Jack is wearing. It's so iconic now, but
yeah, he basically, like a lot of the little touches to the character, he added all of those things himself. The tattoo that he has is actually his real tattoo, but it's in the opposite direction.
Well, in this movie, it's fake. But he did get the Sparrow tattoo eventually. How could you not? How could you're like so tied in, synonymous with this character?
And his son's name is Jack.
Jack. Well, so was the monkey. His son's named after the monkey.
So the Black Pearl is in reality Sparrow's ship. It's not like a ghost ship, kind of is.
It kind of is, but
now that the curse, but it was the Black Pearl before it became the cursed Black Pearl. So Sparrow was the captain of this really scary ship to begin with, yet he's kind of the pirate with a heart of gold. You can't see him like killing women and children and everything like that. But he commandeers his own crew, and his end goal is to get his ship back and to get revenge.
Without a ship, you're not a pirate.
And part of his crew, Zoe Saldana. Before she's Gamora or anything like that. I'm like, I forgot. Maria. I completely forgot she was in it.
Anna Maria and Mr. Cotton. Let's not forget him.
To Jack, this has become more apparent as the series goes on, but I think it's pretty clear here as well. Like, being a pirate represents freedom, and you can't be free unless you have a ship, right?
Yeah. No, what's the point of being a pirate if you don't have a ship? But I think that, I mean, again, you can probably be a pirate and just steal from the big ships that go by. You don't need to kill and pillage people. If anything, you're usually probably like, oh, listen, we'll kill you unless you join my crew. All right, I'll join your crew. All right, you're now a pirate.
Yeah. Oh, and I did want to go back to this because you're talking about the wound. Yes, part of scurvy is poor wound healing. Yeah, that's part of the. So if he hasn't been eating his oranges and lemons, then...
I can't imagine that you're getting a solid diet out there on the high seas.
Yeah, what's pretty scary about scurvy is if it goes on for too long, not only do you have like physical symptoms, but you start to have hallucinations.
Oh, so it ties right into his character.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys ever read the Dan Simmons book, The Terror. It did get made into, I think, a TV.
Yeah, I saw the TV series.
I didn't watch the series, but in the book, he describes pretty intently the effects of scurvy on the crew as they're slowly starving to death.
Well, he was self-medicating with rum, so.
There's no vitamins in rum.
Don't give a shit.
It's the lack of vitamin C that's causing the scurvy. You're not going to get your nutrition.
He's out in the sun. He's getting plenty of sun. He's getting vitamin C.
He's getting vitamin D from the sun.
Oh, is it D?
Yeah.
C's only from oranges?
Well, C is from...
See, I'd be a bad pirate.
Yeah, C is from like any kind of like... You can get it from tomatoes, you can get it from citrus fruit, you can get it from a lot of things, but you need to have it. Actually, there was famously a naval captain who figured this out and started to have lemon slices on board for his sailors so that they wouldn't get scurvy. That's why all these pirates don't have any teeth, because after a while your teeth fall out.
Well, I can't imagine there's a dentist in Tortuga.
Yeah, I mean, people didn't have great dentition, but there was, you're like, not everybody had all their teeth fall out of their gums.
So rum, lemons, and really bad eggs are good.
Mm-hmm. So there has to be a romantic triangle. The movie wouldn't be complete without it. So Norrington is set to marry Elizabeth.
He's too old for her.
But of course, we know that.
So it was a really good match.
And Norrington really doesn't care at the end.
Well, I mean, I think he's like,
whatever.
He's never going to get from her. I don't know.
Norrington like totally concedes everything at the end. He's like, okay, let him go. We'll give him a day's head start. You'd be very happy with Elizabeth. I'm just going to step back.
Well, even the chambermaid. Oh, by the way, how cold can it possibly be in the Caribbean that you need a bed warmer put in your blankets?
with the hot coals,
right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's how it works. I think you put it in first and then get into the bed. I don't think you sleep with that thing, wake up to some hot foot.
And really, wouldn't Jack know better than to steal a piece of that Aztec gold at the end? Because it's not like he does it so he can't be killed. He just like, oh, isn't that interesting? Once like he gets into the moonlight and he's a skeleton.
No.
Yeah, I think he did it on purpose. I think he does it on purpose.
No, he says he says I couldn't help it. He says I couldn't help myself. Like he just stole it, because he's a pirate.
But again, I think that what you're seeing on the outside is not necessarily what you're seeing on the inside with this character.
Yeah, no,
But he tells you. He says I couldn't help myself. It's like
he says he couldn't help himself, but it's very deliberate. They show you him dropping the coins into the treasure, and then you see him do like a sleight of hand motion to show that he's actually got the other coin with him still. It was
so
very
that Barbossa can't kill him.
it's a very deliberate choice in that moment, and Will is watching him do it. So I definitely think that was deliberate because
you are underestimating the great Captain Jack Sparrow.
He underestimates himself because he's like, well, this guy's going to kill me because I'm not that good. That's obviously what he's thinking. He's like,
no, I think he is the worst swordsman out of all.
Right. Well, that he did match Will, you know, right in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that was a great fight.
That is a great fight. That is such a fun introduction to like this whole swashbuckling aspect of this. Yeah, it's unfortunately that each movie it's kind of like diminishing returns a little bit, but I do enjoy these characters immensely, you know, and even what little we get backstory of Jack, it's all lore. Mm-hmm. You know, when the two guys he's trying to sneak onto the ship and the two soldiers are basically telling him, you know, oh, the Black Pearl, you know, they run around and they kill everybody. And he's like, oh, then where do the stories come from?
Yeah.
Like who spread the stories? He knows better.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he was the captain. So.
I like how he just walks past them and gets on the ship. I mean,
because they got caught up, right? The
thing about Jack Sparrow is like he has this perfect audacity in every situation, you know, and I do think he never really thinks he's down, you know, like he's never really down and out. There's always a way.
Well, that goes back to the introduction where you see him on the mast of the ship that's clearly sinking. It's a little dinghy, and yet he's got nothing but utter dignity. You know, just walks right onto the dock and off he goes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right.
And it is a classic line that he gives at the end. Bring me that horizon once he's actually behind the wheel again.
And really bad eggs.
Drink up me heart is yo-ho.
Yo-ho.
Mm-hmm. And we get a post-credit scene here before Iron Man. Years before Iron Man.
All of them have post-credit scenes.
Yeah, they all do.
And actually, the one at the end of the third film is pretty significant. It's really like a coda to Will and Elizabeth's story. So,
but this first film having a post-credit scene is before that was, you know, very fashionable to do. Jack did it first, or actually the monkey did it first.
That's true. Can't keep a good undead monkey down.
No, the monkey apparently prefers being undead to being alive.
He's probably got perks. Doesn't need to eat.
So I was wondering when the phrase "dead men tell no tales" first appeared, because I thought maybe it might be actually Treasure Island or some, you know, iteration of it in Treasure Island, but no. I discovered that it was first written by a Persian poet in the 1520s in a poem about the best way to deal with tricksters. And the line says, "So I finished the rogue, notwithstanding his wails, with stones, for dead men, as you know, tell no tales." I thought that was pretty interesting.
Too bad he didn't copyright that.
Well, I think his copyright would be out of date because it's life of the author plus I think plus 30 might be a little longer. Okay. I need to look this up actually for my errors.
Back to your Treasure Island reference. Those illustrations were created by N.C. Wyeth.
Okay.
Very iconic.
So Pirates, an out-of-the-box hit back in the summer of 2003. It was released on July 9th, so right around July 4th weekend.
Summer blockbuster, huh?
140 million it cost to make, 654 million it made at the box office. So it put the character of Jack Sparrow on the map.
Yes, it
in
did.
the parks and on the ride. As we said, the demand was there.
Yeah.
You know, all the people became so familiar with the movie, and like, you know, the kids asking their parents, "Where's Jack Sparrow?" Disney had to add him. So he is at multiple points of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Did they add Barbossa as well, or no? Just Jack?
Well, there's a spot in the beginning. I don't think it has Barbossa, but it has that, like, the octopus guy from the second movie, Davy Jones.
That's the Davy Jones, like I said, when we were stuck at the one waterfall.
I don't think they do it anymore, but for a couple of years, they had the boat go through the mist right before the ride begins proper, and a projection of Davy Jones was on that mist. That's
where we got stuck, on the mist or the waterfall or whatever it was.
I don't think they do that anymore. I think that they've removed Davy Jones.
It's forever embedded in my child's memory.
So the last time I went So Disney, I think Barbossa's actually on the ships that are fighting each other. I think Barbossa's on one of those ships now.
Okay.
Oh, with the monkey?
I don't recall if he was with the monkey, but you hear him shouting. 2006, the character Jack Sparrow was added. The fearsome Captain Barbossa also replaced the original pirate caption on the wench.
The wench.
So yes.
I like it.
What's
a wench?
The character of we'd be remiss if we didn't mention like the revisions that the ride has gone through over the years.
Yeah.
The auction, the auction of women scene was
gone,
removed. So,
but obviously I don't approve of auctioning women. I don't approve of auctioning people.
That's where you draw the line.
But I used to enjoy the fact that there was a joke in the next scene where all the men who'd bought women were paying for it because they are now getting chased by like women with rolling pins and brooms. And I was like, I actually liked it because there was this little thing like, okay, you've done this thing and now you're paying for it. They changed it now so that, that doesn't happen because, parents were getting upset that their children were seeing people being auctioned.
The main prize in the auction was the redhead, but now she is a pirate herself who is running an auction, not for people, but is it for people? Are they still auctioning people, actually?
I think it's treasure, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's stuff that they're auctioning now.
Again, Eisner was very cagey about releasing a pirate movie, after the failure of The Country Bears. Not that was a pirate movie, but it was based on a Disney park property.
It did steal my money.
They were considering releasing this direct to video for a time. Not after it was made, but when they were developing the movie, they were seeing it as a direct to video release. And they were thinking of Christopher Walken for Jack Sparrow at that time. Can you imagine that? So once it became established that this was going to be released in theaters, they considered Matthew McConaughey for Jack Sparrow.
Naked Bongos?
Naked Bongos, yeah.
Maybe.
And Jim Carrey. But he was too busy doing Bruce Almighty, so he passed. So again, they were on the fence with Johnny Depp, but he eventually won the role. The rest is history.
The rest is history. They sell rum in the gift shop.
They do not. No, but they do have the Magic Candle Company that tries to replicate scents from around the park and in the rides. They do have a banana rum flavor of candle. I thought you were going to say like musty old pirate gear. No, there's actually a scent of the water smell that is unmistakable when you're on the pirate ride.
What is that? Just oil leaking from the boats? What is that smell?
It's like a very odd, like a faint chlorine. It's a very distinct smell. And I think
you probably have to have chlorine there to keep
the main scent is bromine is what they call it. And when you light the candle, it does smell like you're on the ride.
Catapulted right back to
So there's free advertising for the Magic Candle Company. They are not affiliated with Disney in any way. They're their own thing. The Magic Candle. So they have to name their candles very generic names, but in a way that you will know that it ties to this.
Their tagline, dead men smell no tails.
On the topic of the rum, though, Disney did not allow alcohol in the parks for a really long time.
Boo.
That only changed very recently, but there was no alcohol sold in Disneyland. Really? And I think, I think you couldn't get it in the Magic Kingdom either for a long time. But it was because Disney didn't want Walt Disney himself didn't want alcohol in the parks because he said it brought in a rowdy element.
Riffraff.
Yeah.
Riffraff. How about the tired, exhausted adults parenting?
You can just have a Dole Whip.
It's not going to do it for me.
This is the first film to be released under the Disney banner that was rated PG-13. That seems hard to believe, but
yeah, there it is.
All right. So what kind of buckets out of 5 would we give to Pirates of the Caribbean?
I have to go Secret 5.
Secret 5?
Secret 5. Wow.
I might have to go Secret 5 on this.
Wow.
I think that this is, as I mentioned, this is infinitely rewatchable, and I enjoyed it just as much watching it yesterday as I did all those years ago.
These might be the most valid 5 buckets that there are, because these,
The secret ones.
They don't make it onto your predetermined 5 bucket list when you're actually consciously thinking, okay, which movies do I really love? And you write it down. If a movie, when you watch it again, strikes you that hard that you say Eureka, this is a 5 bucket, that is more valid than anything else.
And because we were watching it as a family, which we used to do, my kids were little. And, like I said, here's my wife, reciting lines of dialogue. We're dancing to the music. We can't watch this movie without my son reliving the horrors of being trapped on the ride at 10 o'clock at night for 45 minutes plus. So it is all part and parcel. Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I love this.
And this for me, I have similar emotions because like I said, my son went through a very long, intense pirate phase. He just loved anything to do with pirates, and and especially when he reached the age where he was like reading picture books and stuff, I would have to read picture books with pirates in them, and I would do the pirate voice. Okay,
can you do that for us now?
Well, I need some dialogue to read, but yes, I could do it.
Awesome.
The ride has heavy connotations for me just because I remember going with my dad in the early 80s. And, that was one of the big rides that we went on over and over and over again. And it's thankfully still there, a little bit changed, as we just mentioned. But it's, it's a huge nostalgic journey to go on the Haunted Mansion. Even It's a Small World. That's, I think, part of the allure of a lot of what these parks hold for a lot of the adult aficionados out there. They're just big kids.
Yeah.
Well, and also like this feeling like, your parents take you when you're a kid, and then you take your kids, and then you have the same experience that you had when you were young. And, that I think it's not just like nostalgia. It's like this connection to previous generations. Whenever I go on Small World, I think of my mom because my mom loves that ride, and although now as an adult, like knowing more about Mary Blair, I'm like always looking for like those Mary Blair touches on the ride because she basically she's all over that ride.
I always try to get on that when the clock chimes, and I can never quite do it.
I also like to, when we go to Disney World, I like to eat in the Pinocchio house because you can look down.
Because you can look down, and you can wave at the boats.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
See, I don't have those because I did not go to Disney until I started dating my wife. And the minute she found out that I had never been, she made plans and she took me. So I said,
so you guys have your own.
You're a keeper.
Yeah, but you have your own memory associated with.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So
very much so.
That's the whole thing, is like this idea that you're going to make a memory and that you'll be able to like take that and remember, doing this thing with your wife, with your parent, with your child, with whatever, So for me, pirates are my son, for a long period of time. He was always a water baby, so I don't know. I wonder if that's why he attached to pirates so much, because they were on the water.
Yeah, it's too bad he never experienced 20,000 Leagues then.
Yeah, he did love that movie. Even when he was a young kid, he loved the film. So I do think maybe it was a water thing, but pirates are fun. Pirates have swords.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I will say I do remember when my wife did take me, that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was already closed. And I remember taking the Skyway and going over it. Yeah. And it's just an empty pool, and you could see the little Nautiluses. And it was very, I was like, oh, that would have been cool.
I know. Dead in the water. Literally.
Yeah. No, on its way to being Ariel's Grotto.
Yep.
Yeah, it became Ariel's Grotto.
Yeah. There you go. So
and then
when I went back in the 90s, the last time I had been there was the summer of 87. So it was still operating in its full glory, was 20,000 Leagues. And then it was about 9 years. We went back in 1996, and I didn't realize it had closed. And running to that ride just as I used to at rope drop, as they call it, and seeing an empty pool. And the Nautilus at that point, they had taken the ships out. So it was just the lagoon.
Pool.
Yeah.
With a couple flopping fish.
Maybe they had aerial, probably not. I think it was just all you could see was the track and
Oh, wow. That's
87.
heartbreaking
That's
for a
when
kid.
I actually went for the first time.
Imagine if you guys ran into each other. And you
And
didn't know it.
I remember going on the 20,000 Leagues ride then. 87? How old would you have been then, Jim?
I would have been 16. So that was the last
Yeah.
time in the 80s that I went. The first time I was 12 in 83. I went. So I went 3 times during the 80s.
So before we leave this topic, I just have a question. Is Disney planning on any more of these theme park ride movies?
Well, they had hoped that the Haunted Mansion would become a franchise like Pirates of the Caribbean, but that's not going to work out.
There's no characters. I don't think there's anything remotely like with those characters that you could.
But they exhausted the story. I'm like, where could they go? Even if this was a huge hit, where would they go?
Right.
I don't know where they could have
back
gone.
to the mansion.
Clearly, they intended that. I think that probably, we know that they keep doing these live action reboots of their animation, so they're just going to keep mining their existing IP in some way. But I know that they had hoped that this Haunted Mansion film would become a Pirates of the Caribbean style franchise. And by the way, Pirates of the Caribbean is apparently still not dead because there's been rumors that there's another film in development for the last 5 years.
Yeah. Well, we might have to wait another 5 years before they greenlight it.
So
who knows? I mean, I don't know where they would go. I mean, what would we get? Country Bears, which Jungle Cruise.
Oh yeah. Well, they did the Jungle Cruise, right? And that was actually
Cruise
pretty
was entertaining. It was
successful.
Yeah.
And, again, what they did successfully there that they didn't do with this Haunted Mansion movie is that they kind of created their own mythology for it. They have some references to the ride, but then they just kind of like go ahead and do their own thing. It also depended a lot. You have like 2 great leads, right?
Yeah.
You have
William Blunt.
I don't know if it was a huge out of the box because it just came out in that weird COVID time. So
yeah, because I think it dropped on Disney Plus pretty quick.
It did.
We did see it in the theater and cover it.
Yeah, I saw it on Disney Plus when we covered it.
Do you know my mom watches that movie every single day?
The Jungle Cruise?
Day?
Every single day she watches the Jungle Cruise. She loves that movie.
She's keeping that movie afloat.
So in terms of the future, they are developing the Tower of Terror into a movie.
Well, did we get it?
There was a Tower of Terror with Steve Gutenberg.
Yes.
It was like a TV movie.
Yeah, it was like a made for TV movie. Yeah. Like it's like Disney.
But they're doing a bona fide full screen treatment of it. They're also working on a Space Mountain movie.
I actually put that in my notes. Is that what's next? Space Mountain.
Yeah, they're already. Yeah.
Monorail, the movie.
the people mover.
What about Expedition Everest? That's not Disney though. That's
It is. That's Animal Kingdom.
That's the one with the Yeti, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
In Animal Kingdom.
That's Animal Kingdom. Okay.
I love that ride. That's one of my favorite
very
posters.
You know what you'll never see a movie based on? Splash Mountain.
Yeah,
they already
we're
did
wiping that from the memories.
It's going to be Tiana's Splash Mountain now.
Tiana's Playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have Big Thunder Mountain. That's not based on anything. That's an original.
It could just be a Western, which honestly, Disney's always done Westerns, right? Apple Dumpling Gang, Hot Lead and Cold Feet.
Oh, I love those. They're all on Disney Plus, right?
Oh, yeah.
They are, yeah. If you look for them, they're there.
The Apple Dumpling Gang.
My son, I remember him laughing so hard at Don Knotts in Apple Dumpling Gang.
How could you not?
Like
him and Tim Conway?
That was my son's favorite episode of the Muppet Show. Was the one where Don Knotts hosted.
Don Knotts.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even want to know. Ghost. Tomorrowland. That was another one that was.
I don't know if that could be considered though as a park adaptation.
Based on
very
the area
loosely.
of the park.
That was one of the weirdest.
That was Brad Bird and George Clooney.
That was so weird. Because you kept thinking like the whole goal of this is to actually go to a place called Tomorrowland, right? But then at the end, it's like a big flop.
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a strange film. I think I only saw it one time. I was
I've seen it once. Yeah.
I was pretty excited about the concept, but it didn't really play out.
I don't know. Come up with new stuff. I get it. It's
we talk about this all the time. Right?
I know.
We talk about this all the time.
IP.
It's like existing IP, and like they wanted something that has like a built-in audience already, and they're afraid to take risks, and this is why the success of Barbie and Oppenheimer is exciting. Like, yes, Barbie's existing IP, but when you see the movie, you're going to be like, I can't believe she got away with this. Yeah. So
a little existential.
Well, maybe after this, the first 2 box office weekends of Haunted Mansion, maybe for Tower of Terror, we should go get Guillermo. Maybe we'll ask him what his ideas are for this.
Yeah, that's a little too tame.
Please.
Although I mean, I read just as many positive reviews on IMDb as I did lackluster ones. So, I mean, somebody's enjoying it, but.
Okay. So what else did we do this week?
I made the mistake of watching the new Transformers Rise of the Beast. It's on Amazon Prime. And like I said at the beginning of the show, it dropped it was in theaters like a month ago.
But you have to pay extra for it, right?
No, it's streaming.
Oh, it's Prime.
Yeah, it's Amazon Prime. Yeah, if you have Prime, it's there. Not that I recommend you actually watch it. To be honest with you, the beginning, the human element, which is usually the worst part of the Transformers movie, was pretty entertaining, and I was willing to invest in these 2 characters, but then of course the robots get involved. And I was a big fan of Beast Wars when it dropped in late 80s as the animated series. But you have these robots showing up on Earth millions of years ago, and they're already scorpions and eagles and gorillas, and I'm like, how'd you know that these things? I don't know. It just, again, kind of like stop applying logic to this stuff. I didn't finish it. It was just one of these. I was like, oh, it's free, I'm going to watch it. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to.
So this is not a recommendation.
It is not a recommendation. It's a public service announcement to anybody. Listen, if you're invested in these movies, you know what you're going to get. There you go. My non-recommendation.
Well, I'll throw in that every once in a while, Shudder adds 5 or 6 movies to their roster. And I love when they just do dumps like that, because whenever you open up Shudder, it gives you the most recently added first. Just like, recently added on Netflix or wherever. You can page through what is new on Shudder. So they added a movie which is not new in itself. It's from 2021, but it's called Paul Dude's Deadly Lunch Break. And it's an English movie. Paul Dude, the last name of the character is Dude, spelled Dood rather than Dude. Yeah. But it's a comedy with some horrific and gory elements to it. It reminded me actually of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. It's a beat down character that is beaten down through, the first half of the movie, and his elderly mother dies because because society just relegates him, and he gets his revenge in splendidly gory ways.
Toxic Avenger.
It was fun. It's a fun watch. It's actually more of a comedy than anything else.
And what is it? Paul Dude's what?
Paul Dude's Deadly Lunch Break. So, he works at a shop in a mall in England, which is weird because you never think of, indoor shopping malls being in England. But
in England,
he works in a shop and he goes on a lunch break. And unbeknownst to him at the start of the lunch break, he ends up going on a killing spree. So
so he only kills during lunch?
Apparently, although it seems like what was happening would take place far longer than an hour lunch break would allow you, but still, you gotta.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's on Shudder.
Okay.
So this month on the Criterion Channel, they have a segment called Grindhouse Gothic.
Oh boy.
Which is Roger Corman directs Edgar Allan Poe.
By the way, a staple of the 4:30 movie in the late 70s, early 80s. There would always be an Edgar Allan Poe week, usually with Vincent Price starring in.
Well, that's what Vincent Price is in, I think, all but one of these films. So we watched Mask of the Red Death, which, I don't think I've seen the film in a long time, so I had a better memory of the short story. So we're definitely saying to ourselves, seems like there's a lot of filler here. But, it's fun. It actually seems like it has a slightly higher production quality than Corman's films normally have. And the one thing that was really interesting to me, I was sitting there watching the credits run, and Nicholas Roeg is the DP on this film. Just an example of how everybody in Hollywood basically went through the Corman machine. For people who aren't familiar, Nicholas Roeg directed a lot of movies, including The Man Who Fell to Earth and Don't Look Now, famously, the adaptation of the Daphne du Maurier story. Became a very famous DP and then director. So just crazy to me sometimes when you're watching the credits of a Corman film and you're like, hey.
It's like a who's who.
Speaking of Corman, that was another movie that was added by Shudder this week, is a Corman-produced film, The Dunwich Horror, which is based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, starring Dean Stockwell in the lead. And this is a 1970 movie. So he is like a young man in this and a hippie to boot. So also starring Sandra Dee. So yeah, it is strange who shows up in
I'm Sandra Dee.
Corman produced films. Yeah. Is it Dunwich Horror or Dunwich Terror? No, I can't.
I can't remember, but as soon as you say Dunwich, I'm like Lovecraft. You know, that's you know that it's Lovecraft.
Google it.
Dunwich Horror. Yeah, I just confirmed. Okay, so next week we won't be here, actually. We're taking a break.
A well-earned
break.
Summer vacation.
Summer vacay.
But when we do come back, and we will be back, we are, and hopefully this is still going to be in theaters for us to actually review and bring to you the new iteration of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, how many times has this been adapted to this screen?
This has got to be at least the live action.
Am I running out of fingers now to count?
You had two. Are you counting the turtles themselves? This has got to be the fourth.
And there was a Nickelodeon animation series, which my son loved.
On top of the original.
Actually, I met Kevin Eastman last time I went on book tour, which was 3 years ago, and he was telling me how happy he was actually with the Nickelodeon adaptation. So I wonder.
Well, if you read those original books, the animation is a far departure from what they originally had.
Oh yeah, no, he was just happy with their adaptation of it, and also more, because I was saying how much my son liked it. Our sons are the same age. So we were chatting about that.
That will be on tap when we come back. And along with it, a huge favorite of mine. And this is one I've just been waiting to talk about. And this seems to be an opportune moment because we are going from one sewer to the next.
Going deep into sewers.
With Alligator, the 1980 classic starring
80, huh? I would have put this in the 70s.
No, it's 1980 starring Robert Forster. It was probably filmed in 79, but it didn't come out until 1980. And I think this has just garnered some new life because it was just featured a matter of weeks ago on the Joe Bob Show on Shudder.
Oh, well, there you
Lots of new people are aware of this movie as of right now. So we'll be covering it when we return.
Yes, very cool. Awesome. Well, that was fun.
Yes, it was. All right, everybody, have a fun time on our time off.
Yes, enjoy. We got over 300, almost 300 episodes, so go back into the catalog.
Yes, if you miss us that much, if you're that disappointed that we won't be here,
it'd be nice when we're away that somebody actually leaves us a 5-star review
or reaches out to us and just says, "Hey, I like what you're doing." Just let us know that you're out there, because
I hope somebody says, "I like turtles."
A lot of the time, we don't even know that.
No, we have no clue.
This is even getting into somebody's ears. So if you listen to us, please let us know. We would love to hear.
That would just put a little icing on top of the summer vacay.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. So, and just to bring it back to Pee Wee Herman, Ghost. Thanks for playing along there, Christine. Okay.
All right. Thanks
again.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIconfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.
Dead men tell no tales.